Ladies and gentlemen, respected guests, and curious minds across the globe, they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And today, as we stand on the edge of a new global chapter, those echoes are impossible to ignore. The world, it seems, has been sleepwalking through a transformation so massive, so unstoppable, that by the time it opened its eyes, it was already too late. India had taken over. Now, when I say that, I don't mean tanks rolling down foreign streets or flags hoisted over foreign soil. No, this takeover was not born out of force. It was forged through brilliance, resilience, and undeniable presence. While the world was distracted, divided, and too often dismissive, India was building quietly, steadily, and with fierce intention. You know what's wild? Nobody saw it coming. And that's exactly why it happened. While the rest of the world was busy refreshing their feeds, getting wrapped up in drama, division, and distractions, something extraordinary was taking shape. It was happening quietly, steadily, with no fanfare, right under everyone's nose. India wasn't screaming for attention. It wasn't trying to be loud. It was too busy doing the work. And isn't that how real transformation works? It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It needs focus, grit, discipline. And that's exactly what India had been doing all along: focused, relentless, building. Most people, especially in the West, had this outdated picture of India: a place full of chaos, traffic, and overpopulation. That's what happens when people rely on headlines instead of facts. But while they were looking at the noise, they missed the signal. They missed the fact that India had quietly become one of the most self-sufficient, self-determined nations on the planet. It didn't wait around for the world to hand it a spotlight. It built its own damn stage. And here's the kicker. India didn't rise by copying others. It rose by trusting itself, by leaning into its unique strengths, not running from them, by choosing innovation over imitation. While the world kept comparing, India kept creating. That's not just inspiring, it's a wake-up call. Because how often do we do this in our own lives? How often do we spend our energy watching others win, feeling behind, overanalyzing, instead of doing the work that matters? That's what makes India's rise so damn powerful. It's a mirror, a reminder that consistent effort, even when nobody's watching, especially when nobody's watching, changes everything. Let me tell you something: the digital transformation that happened in India didn't just come out of nowhere. It was strategy, purpose, hustle. They built the world's largest biometric ID system, Aadhaar, covering over 1 billion people. They made banking accessible through mobile phones in rural villages. They made it possible to send money with a fingerprint. And this happened while other nations were still figuring out how to digitize parking tickets. People didn't see the work, so they didn't believe the results. But that's the thing about real change. It doesn't ask for permission. It just shows up. And suddenly the world looks up and goes, wait, when did this happen? And the answer is, while you weren't looking. You see, India didn't just wake up one day and become powerful. It evolved through struggle, through criticism, through being underestimated, again and again and again. But that underestimation became fuel, and that fuel turned into fire. And now the fire is unstoppable. This isn't just about India. It's a bigger truth. The same principle applies to you, to me, to anyone with a dream and a deadline. Stop waiting for the world to notice you. Stop thinking you need someone's approval to get started. You don't. You need action. You need clarity. You need to get to work, even when it's hard, even when no one's clapping, even when the results don't show up right away. Because the people who win, the ones who actually break through, they're not the loudest. They're the ones who stay focused when everyone else is distracted. They're the ones who bet on themselves and keep showing up. India did that for decades. And now the world is watching in awe, realizing too late what was happening all along. And you know what? That's okay. Let them be late. Because the people who are actually doing the work, the ones who have been building behind the scenes, they don't need validation. They have results. So the next time you think you're behind, or invisible, or underestimated, remember India. Remember the quiet strength it took to rise when no one believed it could. Remember that greatness doesn't need to shout. It needs consistency, commitment, courage. Because when you keep showing up, when you stay grounded in purpose and driven by effort, the world will wake up eventually. And by then, it'll be too late. You'll already be there. Let me tell you something that'll blow your mind. The most powerful companies in the world, the ones shaping your phone, your search engine, your software, your business tools, your daily life, they're being run by people who grew up in the streets of India, not born into billions, Not gifted Golden Gates and Ivy League last names. These were kids who shared bedrooms with siblings, studied by candlelight during power cuts, fought their way into engineering schools with a level of grit that would crush most people. And now, they're running the show. You want to talk about leadership? Look at Sundar Pichai at Google, Satya Nadella at Microsoft, Arvind Krishna at IBM, Shantanu Narayan at Adobe. These aren't just CEOs. These are people who came from a country that the world used to overlook, and now they're sitting at the very top of the digital empire. But here's what nobody talks about: how they got there. Because it wasn't luck. It wasn't just talent. It was resilience. It was choosing to work harder than anyone else in the room. It was pushing through failure after failure and still getting up to show up. And you know what? That mindset, that no excuses, zero complaint, figure it out mentality is wired into the DNA of so many Indians who've made it big on the world stage. The world thought talent only came from certain zip codes, that genius wore a certain skin tone or carried a specific accent. And India smashed that myth to pieces. It reminded everyone that brilliance doesn't need permission.
It doesn't need a fancy last name or a big city address.
Brilliance just needs a chance and a lot of grind. Now, here's where it gets personal, because you can take this lesson and put it right in your own life. How many times have you looked at successful people and thought, well, they were lucky, or they must have had connections? Stop. That kind of thinking is poison. It keeps you small. It makes you believe success is something that only happens to people, not something you earn. The truth? Every single Indian leader who climbed to the top of a global company did it the hard way. They outworked, outlearned, outlasted. They didn't whine. They didn't wait for anyone to give them the green light. They made their own road. And guess what? That's available to you too. That level of hustle, that ability to stay focused, to drown out the noise, to obsess over getting better every day, that's not reserved for a select few. That's a skill, a choice, a mindset. And if millions of kids growing up in underfunded schools and remote villages in India can develop it, so can you. What India proved to the world, and what these leaders are proving every single day, is that your background doesn't define your future. Your current struggle doesn't limit your potential. You can come from absolutely nothing and still change everything. Think about it. Indian kids are growing up seeing people like them running the biggest tech companies in the world. Do you understand how massive that is? What that does to your self-belief? You don't need a Hollywood superhero when the CEO of Google sounds just like your uncle. That's not just representation, that's revolution. And don't miss this. This isn't about just tech. This is about what happens when a country invests in education, when it produces engineers, coders, problem solvers by the millions. This is about what happens when a generation decides to learn the skills that actually run the world, and then puts them to work. While other nations were busy consuming, India was producing. While others were busy scrolling, India was studying. While the West was busy managing burnout, Indians were managing billion-dollar companies. That's not an accident. That's discipline. That's vision. That's generational determination showing up in real time. So if you're sitting there thinking you need to wait until someone picks you or invites you or believes in you, stop. You don't need permission. You need purpose and a plan and the willingness to get up and keep going when the world counts you out. Because here's the truth: by the time the world wakes up and realizes what's happening, the people who kept showing up are already in charge. India didn't just take a seat at the table. It built a new table, and now the whole world wants in. Let me hit you with something most people don't realize. India didn't wait for anyone to give it a blueprint for the future. It wrote its own. While other countries were stuck in red tape, drowning in bureaucracy, arguing over who gets credit, India just did the work. Quietly. Relentlessly. And today, India isn't just playing catch-up, it's leading the damn game. Now let's talk about what really happened. Because this isn't set luck. And it's definitely not a fluke. India built a digital system so powerful, so scalable, and so human-focused, that the rest of the world is finally looking over and asking, wait, how did they do that? You want to know how? One word: necessity. See, when your population is 1.4 billion, there's no time for ego. No time for slow. No time for broken systems that only work for the privileged few. You either build solutions that work for everyone or you fall apart. So India did what it always does when it's underestimated. It figured it out. It made impossible things happen. 1 billion people got digital IDs. Do you know how wild that is? That's like getting the entire population of North America, Europe, and a chunk of Africa, all registered and connected with one system. And they didn't do it with massive luxury budgets or over-engineered tech. They did it with focus, with urgency, and with a belief that progress doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to start. Let's talk about UPI for a second. UPI, Unified Payments Interface. Sounds technical, but here's what it really means. India made it so simple to transfer money. Anyone with a phone, yes, even a basic one, can make a payment faster than you can send a text. Street vendors, farmers, rickshaw drivers, college students, they're all using it. No fancy bank accounts, no six-step verifications, no delays, just boom, done. And this didn't come from Silicon Valley. It didn't come from billion-dollar startups. It came from within, built in India, by Indians, for Indians. And now, it's being studied globally. Kenya's looking into it. Singapore's already using parts of it. Countries with more money, more infrastructure, and more expertise are suddenly playing catch-up. Why? Because India didn't wait for perfect conditions. It created the conditions. That's what you need to hear, loud and clear. You don't wait for permission. You don't wait for the world to hand you the tools. You work with what you've got, and you keep going until you make something that works. And if you keep showing up like that again and again and again, guess what? One day the world will wake up and realize you've already built the future. India's not just digitized, it's leapfrogged. While people in advanced countries are still mailing checks or swiping outdated cards, a fruit vendor in Delhi is getting paid via QR code. That's not just innovation, that's democratization. That's giving real power to real people. And it didn't stop with payments. India built platforms for everything. Healthcare appointments, done. School enrollments, done. Government subsidies, direct to your phone, no middlemen, no corruption, no delay. Efficiency on a level most developed countries only dream of. All from a country people used to describe as too chaotic to modernize. What a joke. Here's what nobody tells you. Desperation creates determination. And when you've got a billion people counting on solutions, you don't wait around debating. You get damn good at solving real problems. Fast. That's what India did. So yeah, while the world was romanticizing slow, polished, over-designed progress, India was focused on impact. And it moved fast because it had to. It didn't care about shiny products. It cared about results. And now, the results are undeniable. This is your reminder that you don't need ideal conditions to create something revolutionary. You need vision. You need hunger. You need to look at your limitations and say, watch me turn this into power. Because that's exactly what India did. It didn't just embrace the digital age, it built its own version of it. Custom scalable, inclusive, efficient, and now the rest of the world is scrambling to keep up. So stop thinking you need more time, more money, more resources to start. You need to start with what you've got, right now. Because if India can digitize over 1 billion people with limited tools but unlimited determination, then what's your excuse? Let the world sleep. Let them doubt. Just like India, you stay focused, stay scrappy, stay building. And by the time they finally look your way, you'll already be miles ahead. You ever walk into a room and realize the whole vibe has already shifted, and you're the last one to notice? That's exactly what happened with India's culture. While the world was busy labeling it as exotic or foreign or stuffing it into tourist brochures, India's influence was quietly seeping into every corner of the globe. And now, it's everywhere. In your Spotify playlists, on your dinner plate, in your yoga class, on Netflix, in the way you celebrate, the way you move, the way you breathe. And most people didn't even see it happening. Because that's the thing about true influence. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't bang on the door. It just walks in, adds value, changes the energy, and suddenly you can't imagine life without it. That's exactly what India's soft power did. Let's start with something simple. Food. Indian food didn't just land in other countries, it took over. Butter chicken is as common in London as fish and chips. In New York, turmeric lattes are sold for $9 by people who can't pronounce haldi, and spices. You used to find them in specialty aisles. Now they're in everything. From fast food to fine dining, Indian flavors aren't just accepted, they're craved. And then there's Bollywood. Let me be clear. This isn't just about flashy dance numbers and drama. It's about a storytelling engine that reaches billions. It's emotion. It's color. It's music that gets into your soul and refuses to leave. Bollywood's not just for Indians anymore. It's global. Songs like Natu Natu are being played at weddings in Europe. Bollywood beats are blasting in African clubs, Middle Eastern malls, and South American festivals. It's cultural wildfire, and it doesn't care about language barriers. But wait, it goes even deeper. Yoga, Ayurveda, meditation, all those wellness trends the West has been raving about, guess where they came from? That's right. India. What was once called strange, mystical, or alternative is now called self-care, mindfulness, holistic health. People pay thousands of dollars for retreats to learn what Indian households have been practicing for generations. Stretch, breathe, center yourself. That wisdom, ancient, that power, Indian. And you know what's wild? India never needed to push this on anyone. It didn't need a massive PR machine. It didn't flood social media with ads. The culture spoke for itself. It was so rich, so deep, so full of life that it pulled people in. It made them feel, and when something makes you feel, really feel, you don't forget it. Think about it. Kids in Brazil are doing TikToks to Indian music. Celebrities are wearing saris on red carpets. Yoga is a $100 billion industry in the West. And in classrooms around the world, students are learning about Diwali. Not because someone forced it, because it matters. This is what soft power looks like. It's not loud, it's magnetic. It doesn't fight for attention, it earns loyalty. And India mastered that game without even trying to play it. Now let me tell you why this matters to you. Because the world will always try to convince you that power is about being loud, dominant, in your face. That you have to market yourself and make noise to be seen. But India shows you something completely different, that the deepest impact comes from staying rooted in who you are. That authenticity, real, unapologetic, grounded authenticity wins. India didn't chase trends. It set them by being fully itself, by honoring its heritage, its art, its music, its rituals, its language. While others were imitating each other, India was busy being original, and now the world is catching up. That sips your blueprint. Stop thinking you have to water yourself down to be accepted. Stop thinking you have to fit in to succeed. You don't. You have to stand in your truth. Be consistent. Be bold. Be proud of where you come from, what you love, how you speak, how you live. Because when you fully own your culture, your story, your roots, you don't just get noticed, you become unforgettable. India did that, quietly, confidently, and now it owns a piece of the global soul. So if you're waiting for someone to validate you before you show up fully, don't be like India. Show up anyway. Show up with your full voice, full flavor, full fire, and let the world catch up. Let's get one thing straight. India didn't wait for an invitation to sit at the geopolitical table. It just pulled up a chair, looked the world in the eye, and said, "We're not here to pick sides, we are a side." That kind of confidence, that doesn't come from ego. That comes from clarity, from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and where you're headed. While the world was busy fighting to stay relevant, India was quietly becoming essential. You know what's powerful? When someone who's always been underestimated decides they're not playing backup anymore. They step up, speak up, and the whole room goes quiet. That's what happened on the global stage. While the headlines were all about the US versus China, trade wars, tensions, alliances, India wasn't yelling. It was positioning, calculating, moving with intention. And now, you've got global leaders lining up to visit New Delhi, not because they have to, but because they want to, because they finally get it. India's not a pawn, it's a player, and not just any player, a stabilizer, a negotiator, a deal maker. The country that was once written off as developing is now helping shape development across continents. You don't get to that place by chance. You get there by showing up with consistency and strength over time. You get there by investing in your people, your economy, your values. And you know what else? You get there by refusing to be pushed around. That's the difference between being reactive and being strategic. And India chose strategy. Think about it. During global conflicts, pandemics, trade disruptions, power plays, India played it smart. It didn't jump on bandwagons. It didn't blindly follow global trends. It made its own calls, took independent stands at the UN, helped broker talks when bigger nations couldn't agree. It said, "We'll talk to both sides. We'll build with everyone, but we won't be told who we are." That level of sovereignty, that's not just political. That's psychological. That's a mindset shift. It's what happens when you stop living in reaction to the world and start leading in it. And let me just say this, it's not easy to do that. When you're coming from a place that's been overlooked for decades, the pressure to conform, to please, to not make waves is intense. But India didn't flinch. It understood its value. It stopped trying to be liked and started focusing on being respected. There's a big difference. Now you've got India hosting the G20, making headlines not for crisis but for contribution. You've got international alliances that need India, not as an accessory but as an anchor. Because in a world full of extremes, India became the balance. And trust me, balance is rare and powerful. But here's the thing. This shift didn't happen in some boardroom with suits and ties. It started with the people, with the mindset of a population that said, we're done being told who we are. Farmers, students, engineers, entrepreneurs, they all started thinking differently, bigger, bolder. They started owning their narrative, and that ripple effect reached the top. That's how change works. It doesn't always come from the top down. It comes from a collective decision to stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for your presence, to step forward even if your voice shakes. India did that, and the result? It's not just present in the room, it's redefining the room. It's influencing global tech, policy, trade, defense, health, space, climate, every major issue of the next 50 years. This isn't a coincidence. This is what happens when a nation and its people decide they're not here to follow anymore, they're here to lead. So what does this mean for you? It means stop underestimating your role in the bigger picture. Stop waiting until you feel ready to take space. You get ready by moving, by showing up, by deciding that your voice, your perspective, your value isn't up for debate. You don't need the world's approval to matter. You need your own. India proved that. And if it can go from being the one that got talked over to the one that's helping lead the conversation, so can you. Because when you stand up for yourself long enough, the world has no choice but to stand with you. Everybody loves a good underdog story until the underdog wins, and then suddenly people start acting surprised. They say, wait, how did that happen? When did they get so powerful? You want to know when? While you were sleeping on them. That's exactly what happened with India. The world thought it was having a moment, like some viral rise that would pass. But this isn't a moment, it's a movement. It's permanent. It's earned. And if you don't get that yet, if you still think India's rise is some temporary trend, you're already too late. See, the real shift didn't happen when India got headlines. It happened in the decades before that when nobody was watching, when the lights were off, and India was still working, still building, still climbing. That's what makes this story so powerful. It's not about one event, one leader, one big break. It's about grit. Repeated. Relentless. Grit. This didn't happen because India waited for perfect timing. It happened because India got sick of waiting. And the minute you stop waiting for someone else to give you a shot, that's the minute everything changes. That's when you go from dreaming to doing. People think transformation comes with fanfare. Like there's this big moment where everything turns around. No, that's not how it works. The biggest changes come from boring, unsexy consistency, day in, day out, doing the work, fixing systems, educating the population, getting people connected, empowering women, launching businesses, learning from failure, again and again and again. And that sips exactly what India did. For years, the rest of the world kept calling it developing, while India kept developing, till the world kept pointing out the problems, while India focused on solutions, till the world kept saying not yet and India kept saying watch us. And now, the results are here. Not just in economic numbers or tech milestones, in mindset, in momentum, in identity. This isn't just growth, it's a national awakening. A whole country that went from waiting to be noticed to deciding it didn't need to be. It just needed to deliver. Let me tell you something that applies to every single person listening. When you focus on your movement, not your moment, you become unstoppable. Because moments come and go, trends fade, applause dies down, but movements keep going, even when no one's clapping. That's what India tapped into. It stopped chasing validation and started chasing vision. It wasn't about proving the haters wrong. It was about proving itself right. That shift, that's what you need in your own life. Because as long as you're living for other people's approval, you're stuck. But the minute you start living for your own purpose, your own pride, your own damn potential, that's when the game changes. India SIP's game changed. It's no longer the country people talk about in future tense. Shoot. It's no longer someday India will rise. That day already came. and most of the world missed it. They were too busy watching the usual power players. But by the time they looked around, India was already leading. And now? It's not slowing down. It's not slowing down. India has become a force. Economically, culturally, technologically, geopolitically, not because someone gave it power, but because it took responsibility for its own. It owned its story. It reclaimed its voice. And it made damn sure that when history looks back, India won't be a footnote. It'll be a headline. So if you're sitting there thinking you're stuck or that it's too late for you, stop. Look at India. Look at the decades of patience, the years of effort without recognition, the faith, the failures, the determination, and now the victory. That's how movements are made. One stubborn, disciplined, unshakable step at a time. This isn't a peak. This isn't the end of the road. This is just the beginning. India's not done. The movement is still moving. And if you're smart, you won't just watch it. You'll learn from it. You'll ask yourself, what am I building that lasts? Not what goes viral, not what trends, but what lasts. Because the world already woke up to India's rise. Too late. And you've got two options. Keep hitting snooze on your own potential, or wake up, get moving, and make sure you're not the next one. People say, when did they take over? After it already happened.